are live, I think, according to the strange YouTube thing. Hey, so we're going to be doing a sort of a round table where we're going to be discussing, because obviously the pandemic that has occurred has essentially wrecked the economy. I heard some of the Chicago school economists talking on the Lumen Christi Institute YouTube channel, saying that as of the 5th of May, the economic contraction was 3 to 4 times more intense than it was in 2008. But in the midst of all chaos, there are always opportunities, and there's not only money to be made, but also people to meet and people to help. So I decided that I'd have a variety of voices on. So today we're joined by Isidore. Say hello.
Hello.
Joined by Mick.
Hello.
We're joined by Doughboy, if he's here.
Hello.
And we're joined by Snowball. By the way, if you guys have questions in the chat, well, first of all, please share the stream, because you know how YouTube is with the recommendations. But if you have questions, just tag us, and we will, of course, respond if they're interesting questions, right? Also, Snowball, you've got a bit of wind in your mic, so if you want to maybe...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah, so one of the first things I wanted to talk about was the clear mental health impact that this is having on people. Who has seen that with other people, and just general? Who's seen that?
I mean, from reports
Like in the
in the news, I've seen that a lot. But like with regards to my schoolmates, I kind of lost contact with most of them. Since I don't really have any contact with them, and I have talked to one friend, and he said like he's been developing what seems to be depression. Of course, it's not clinical unless it's diagnosed, but you can tell that a lot of the signs are setting in. I know some people who are beginning to have suicidal ideation in my school, as well as some of the schools in my area.
Yeah, I can say for certain myself, I know of a person who's killed themselves, actually. And I've been able to infer this from the behaviour of friends of mine, not just online but in real life. And it seems like people are a lot more tense, a lot more lonely. And so I think that it's clear that there's going to be some serious mental health problems after we're out of lockdown and things go back, quote unquote, to normal. Because I mean, there's no normal anymore. What happened before this isn't ever going to come back, I don't think, unless you guys want to disagree.
Oh, like you know how we always talk about people are really difficult. People find it very difficult to quote unquote adult or act like adults, but they use adult as a verb. It's so hard to adult.
I can't adult today.
But what I'm seeing now is I think that people had a kind of stumbling routines with their life, and they kind of live paycheck to paycheck, and they had their entertainment and so forth, and they lived basically with the future up to their noses. They couldn't see anything past their noses. And now when they have to reintegrate, they're probably going to forget all those things. Their routine has been broken, and they don't really know how to reestablish themselves. If they go back and try to do all those Rick and Morty pop-up bars or whatever, then it's not going to be the same. And I think a lot of people are going to be left looking for meaning. I mean, it's just going to be a lot more desperate, I think.
Yeah, I mean, with the economic consequences as well. I mean, millions of people have lost their jobs. I've heard things like I have a friend of mine is a priest from America, and he's told me that apparently in America there are people protesting with their guns out and stuff. Like, I don't know if that's true.
Michigan. That's true. Yeah.
Oh, and
Yeah,
and
the
there's
protesting the
also-
lockdown.
there are huge riots in India right now, like because of how fragile Indian society was. Hundreds of millions of people are currently going hungry. Like not hungry as in the sense of I skipped a meal, but as in they haven't had food for like weeks in some cases. So, maybe the first world can gracefully fall apart, but I don't know what's going to happen in places like India or Bangladesh or places that aren't so fortunate to have the amount of infrastructure we have here.
Yeah. I've heard as much as well. In fact, I remember hearing about a UN report that suggested that 300,000 people could starve to death a day just based on the supply disruptions that we're going to have from this event. So,
yes.
I mean, I don't want to catastrophize too much. I was going to try and focus on what we can do in this, but it's going to be pretty rough in Africa, in Latin America, and in Asia. I think.
Oh, and just to kind of restate what I said earlier, because of all the things that are shutting down, and if the lockdown is lifted, like there are no restaurants to go to, no entertainment, and even if you stay inside and watch Netflix, I've heard that they're not filming any new shows or anything. But all the writers are not working right now, so there's going to be nothing for at least several months. I don't know how that will pan out.
Yeah. Also, just to remind the new people that have come in here, I've seen a couple of new people come in here. If you want to tag us and ask questions, go ahead, because I think this is a round table. I got these guys just off of the servers that I'm on because I figured, well, it'd be interesting to see what ideas come out. And likewise, if you guys want to take part, just tag in the chat and ask questions. But yeah, that's actually an interesting point. There's going to be no entertainment, so I think that it may be an opportunity if people want to start YouTube channels for them to do so. Yeah.
There's going to be a boom in creativity, I think.
Yeah, everyone's going to be sitting on their computers watching YouTube nowadays. Netflix.
There's that too, yeah.
I mean, there's only so far that Netflix can take you. There's not really.
And if this thing goes on, obviously people are like, I don't want to use a kind of yucky metaphor here, but I think entertainment is not like pornography where you always look for weirder and weirder stuff. People generally have fixed tastes, and once let's say you watch 3 or 4 shows regularly on Netflix, and those shows have stopped filming on HBO or Hulu or whatever, you have absolutely nothing left to watch. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible to exhaust all the movies. I mean, we've been stuck in lockdown for 2 months, and though thankfully, I mean, I've just finished the last exam for my entire degree. I've had something to focus on. I can imagine a case where a lot of people have just been sitting watching movies for those whole 2 months, and just streaming and doing stuff like that. Okay, so hello, my name is Dawson. Has a question. Do you think silver will be used as currency if the economy were to collapse? Well, I'll put it this way. I've heard from people who are investing in the markets that the gold price is a complete lie and they've been manipulating it. And I've heard that silver isn't. But I don't think that the economy is going to get so bad that you're not going to be able to use fiat currency. I don't know if you guys are going to...
When things get really bad... Gold and silver and other precious metals are basically just boomer Bitcoin. Because when you're trading gold, first of all, you're not really owning it. It's kind of like a crypto exchange where it's in your name, but it's not like in your hand. If you have a USB full of Bitcoins or you have a box full of gold bars, that's different from having it in an exchange. But also, gold is for 2 things. First is for speculation, quote unquote, investment, or basically quote unquote speculation, and the second is industrial uses for stuff like electronics or stuff. And that basically means that the gold price is just not going to be stable. It's not a solid retreat. It's a fake, false haven of safety for those people. With regards to an actual economic collapse, we are probably going to see a rise in like local currencies. I know there's a town in Germany several years ago who experimented with a local currency that was printed by the city hall, and they were able to shop at local shops, but probably not going to have a precious metal, not enough volume.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there are some people here who are saying we can't have a society full of YouTubers. Obviously, the point is here, guys, is to throw ideas out so that you can work on something that you think will be effective. Right, like for example, I've noticed, I think we've all noticed, as we mentioned earlier on, that there are some serious mental health problems that are going to be persistent in the pandemic afterwards. And so I'm thinking of writing a book that will provide some help to those people, mostly through mental prayer. Because I know for a fact that mental prayer has a great effect on people's mental health, in excess of a lot of counsellors. In excess of a lot of counsellors, because a lot of counsellors just sort of... I don't want to say justify the immorality of people, but they aren't necessarily critical and they aren't blunt. Whereas the sayings that you'll read in mental prayer will make it dead clear in a way that doesn't actually relate to you, that there are certain things that you don't want to be doing. Not to mention the peace of mind that you get from meditation anyway. So I'm thinking of doing that and putting a number of other things in there, but let's see, there's other questions. People are also being reckless online. It's a danger for families with children. It causes the younger to have doubts about the future. That was a question. I don't know where the question is in that, but...
Repeat that? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you mean.
People who make up conspiracy theories? What?
Yeah, I mean,
there's talking about like this. It's gonna lead him towards like it's like a funnel, you know.
Oh,
starts with one thing and leads down to something else, with algorithms.
Is it like that one man on Twitter who's like, a lot of teens are gonna come out of quarantine radicalized freaking Nazis?
They already are. I mean, come on.
Yes.
I mean, I hear enough.
There's plenty of political radical boiling over these days, and has been for decades. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's only, like, I'm just responding to McAllen here, so that people really want entertainment, they can watch old movies and TV shows, not as paused as modern woke rubbish. Well, I mean, there's only so much Lily Singh you can watch. I'll put it that way. Like, man. Why... Yeah, this is a question from Thomas. Why is the video on America First unavailable? Well, because to be honest, it wasn't very well structured, so that's why I closed it off, because I thought, well, that was a waste of time. But, So other things that you think might be opportunities, guys? Is there anything that springs to mind beyond, mentally caring for the mental health of people and entertainment?
I mean, for me, the only big thing for me is that if I need to take out college loans, the interest rates are going to be pretty low for my loans. I mean, of course, the banks might just keep the loans high, pocket the difference. I don't know how financial economics works, but hopefully it'll be cheaper for me to attend school.
Yeah, but I'm not thinking like first of all, having come to the end of a computer science degree, I can tell you for a fact I'd have rather done mathematics first of all, and second of all, I think that for most people, the information that they want is available online. The only thing that university really provides is first of all a stamp, and second of all a motivation to study. So like you can't. It's really hard to set yourself an assignment, but the assignments are when you really learn. That's what I've learned at uni. So I think
what I've seen as the paying for college to me is analogous to paying a rental deposit for living in society.
You live in a society? No, that was awful. I'm sorry. But yeah. Okay, so Neko King asks, what's your thoughts on people who believe there's going to be a new world order because of the lockdown? There's a lot of crazy things. Like I saw a person from the political party I was in go on her public Facebook and advocate for mobs to track down the Muslim gangs because of the study that Priti Patel released. Because Priti Patel's who's our Home Secretary, is working on a study into Rotherham, the full study, and she's like unironically on there, like Fed posting, saying, yeah, why don't we form gangs to lynch the people that did this? And people were agreeing with her as well. It's like, it's nuts.
Jeez.
I mean,
damn.
Yeah. I mean, it's driving all particularly the libertarian end of people. I've noticed the libertarians go a bit nuts. I mean, they were already a little bit strange, but it seems to be going a bit far.
Yeah, I think it's
can it be expected probably in the next few weeks, months, that some tensions are really going to go up? Like some serious stuff, like probably French Revolution shit we're talking about.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
We had I had a stream on here with Hassan actually the other week about this. But I mean,
Yeah.
like, did you hear about the church that was burnt down because they refused to close down during the lockdown and people spray painted? I bet
saw
you
that.
self-isolate
No,
there.
it's not a church. It's not a church. It's an ecclesial community. Okay.
Oh, is it one? It's an Ondanon one or something, isn't it? Or it's Pentecostal?
Oh, well.
It was Pentecostal, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, either way,
Uh,
same thing, right? So Muscle Pass says, so far as the closet crazies have camo out the suicided the violent. I don't think English is his first language. I can't actually understand what you're saying. What's your thought? Wait, okay, I've already answered that question. I love it. I'm talking about.
I don't know what the thing is about adrenochrome. Adrenochrome is pretty easy to synthesize from a total synthesis or from a partial synthesis from, like I've kind of researched it a little bit. It doesn't seem like that adrenochrome is really like a substance. It seems kind of Q boomer tier stuff. There's probably...
as far as I could tell, the origin of people knowing about adrenochrome and the idea of it, it comes from Hunter S. Thompson's book, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Yeah, that's as far as I could tell is the origin of it, and I don't know how much he's followed up on that idea.
Yeah, the adrenochrome isn't the important thing. The important thing is that they're doing things with children that's where they're getting their power from, so to speak. Of course, they're not really getting power. They're not really getting stronger. They're getting weaker, of course, but that's probably the more important thing than just some organic molecule, because that's just.
Yeah. To me, it seems like Hunter put that in the book, more so to talk about the just the rampant sex abuse that happens in these drug circles.
Oh man, I mean, I've actually thought about doing a real life channel just to talk about everything I've seen at university because it's just insane. Well, in that respect.
Oh boy,
just weird sex things, yeah.
Well, not even just that, but like just all of the weird things generally. I mean, it's like it's not even real life. It's really strange.
The real world ended in 2012, and now we are living in the simulation dream world. Ever since the world ended in 2012.
I mean, Jordan Peterson was kind of right when he said that universities are like Neverland, where you pay and you go to Adventure Island and nothing is real. The only thing that's really real at university is basically the assignments that you do.
I don't want to sound like a total book reader, but because I hate nerds, that there's a concept from Baudrillard. There's a concept from Baudrillard called hyperreality.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I think university is a perfect example of hyperreality between like the fake ivy and like all the kind of buildings that they make to create the university vibe. Like if you go to any university campus in any country that's built in the past 20 years or whatever, they all have the same kind of feeling, and they're not local. And that's probably trying to prepare, like involuntarily, people for sort of liberal cookie cutterness, where every city looks the same, so every college campus looks the same, and probably soon every public school will begin looking the same. I mean, China still doesn't look the same as like your average American classroom, but I think maybe in 30 years or so, assuming this doesn't blow up, if we look at schools, the schools would begin to converge onto similar designs.
Yeah, actually, one thing that I've been thinking is an opportunity, because, I mean, I'm looking into master's programs at the moment and jobs, but I think that they will end up being online. They might end up being online anyway. And why would I do a master's degree if it's just online videos?
Yeah.
If I'm going to do a master's, I'm going to go to the university and I'm going to sit in the bar and I'm going to drink and then I'm going to do the assignments whenever, right? I think there is a huge opportunity here to build internet education platforms, and I suppose when I was running the Patreon, that was kind of it. But I think that if somebody here has a lot of skills and is absolutely intent and gets up every day and records themselves with the whiteboard and makes the assignments and gets the internet clout, then they could really get attention and really sell a lot of courses. And I don't mean like these, like the Dan Locke or the, the Ty Lopez's of the world who say, "Oh, I can make you rich."
When you click on their advertisement and the video, you can't pause the video, those kinds of things, and you have to scroll down and they say, "Buy my book." And if you switch to a different tab, the video stops because they want to keep you on the tab.
I mean, those sorts of people who basically recycle what Robert Kiyosaki did and add a little bit of pizzazz to it. And I mean, a lot of these function like cults. In fact, they are cults. But, if you could actually go out there and teach useful things and then market them, you could make like a killing, right? Like, for example, if you could do a course teaching, I don't know, support vector machine artificial intelligence, there'll be a lot of people who have just come out of bachelors in computer science which aren't going to go to like graduate programs because the universities are closed, who are going to want to learn about the more intense and more difficult parts of machine learning. And so that might be a good place to start if anyone knows them. That's just a very, very radical example.
I think about master's degrees. I know technically a master's of business administration is not a master because there's no thesis. But imagine how useless an online MBA would be in this climate. Because the entire point is to network.
Probably for the long run, if you really want something in the long run, best thing you probably could do is drop out of college and go get a trade. It's probably the case.
It is different for different things. A lot of people just the work that a trade, say plumbing or carpentry or electrician, doesn't fit for a lot of people. And if I talk to people who I respect, they say you shouldn't go to a trade because outside of a couple of key trades, and STEM is interesting because you have this thing about computer science jobs are going to be outsourced to India and Malaysia and there's not going to be any jobs for you anymore. Well, I don't know if that's true because...
No, I don't think it is. I've looked around. Like, I remember I was researching for my artificial intelligence exams and for even, like, computer networks exams on things that are pretty old. And the amount of material is startlingly small. I mean, I couldn't even find... There's maybe 2 or 3 articles online that are really about bias variance trade-off that aren't these massive scientific papers, right? There really isn't that much out there. I was very surprised. So I don't think it's the Chinese and the Indians aren't going to replace you in comp sci. Particularly considering most of the Indians in programming are not very good at it.
I mean, for China and the US have a tech war, right? Or China and the West have a tech war, and they don't want to serve the other party necessarily. Of course, China does a lot better job of protecting their technologies than America and the West does.
Their technology is worse, though. They're militarily 20 years behind the States.
Yeah, and I have several Chinese social media accounts, and they're not.
But everything's made there.
Actually, with regards to this coronavirus situation, there is apparently more pickup in manufacturing in other countries like Vietnam and Mexico and Brazil. And China is beginning to fall behind in manufacturing. Whether China as a whole they probably can't transition fully to a post-industrial or, kind of leaving industrial, entering a fully service economy soon enough. I don't know, because outside of the tier 1 cities like Shanghai and Shenzhen and Beijing, like the other places are still going to be left behind in the dust because there's still parts of China that are barely industrialized, barely have any infrastructure. They missed building up industrial capability to pull themselves up economically, and now the rest of the country has moved on to the post-industrial phase. They're still going to be in that pre-industrial phase. So China is an interesting case.
Yeah, you see a lot of you see places like Shanghai and Hong Kong and such, and they're sometimes bigger than the Western cities. But then you see, like, I've seen videos of the smaller cities in Sichuan province and places like that, and they look like something out of the 1950s.
Yeah,
Like you literally go to Gansu province, which is the far west of China, and you take away the people, and it's indistinguishable from like an African village because they have like thatched roofs and the door isn't like the door is made out of like scrap planks. Like it's China is not developed.
No. I mean, they also don't have the kind of capacity to even feed their population without having food imported to them. Like they need to import rice, which is like
Yeah, because
they're-
one thing is that like because of all the industrial production, huge amounts of Chinese fresh water and arable land is not suitable for agricultural use anymore. Right? It's too toxic. I mean, who cares if it's too toxic? They're going to grow it and feed their own people and poison their own people anyway. But you know what I mean? It's not worth it.
No.
Nope.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so it's like really the only thing they could do is survive on being a producer of other people's goods. That's kind of it. And I think after this, that might change. If nations are smart, they'll change that whole thing for them.
Oh, and another big problem in China, besides the fact that they're going to conflict with Southeast Asia over fresh water and access to rivers, is the population. Because of several decades of one-child policy, you have this current generation having to support 2 parents and 4 grandparents. And with a slowing down economy, as you know, China's a paper tiger.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of hungry people in China, particularly the older generation. But that's not necessarily a concern because I think it was Mao. Mao said that China has 800 million people. If 400 million die, we still have 400 million left over, something like that. So I'm not sure what the Chinese government is thinking. As long as they can keep civil war away, then they are fine with half the country starving. So that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. So I mean, I've seen a couple of questions, although the chat's kind of going a bit mental.
Schizo.
Some of these questions. Dawson, I don't know the answer to that question there. I'm not going to read it out because it sounds too crazy. But essentially, I do think that China is a paper tiger, but I'm not sure how this contributes to what we on the ground can do too much. I think that it's more important to think about what we can do, right? Trump can worry about China.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's more of a matter of finding fields to be able to express, Yeah, I know the Discord link is expired, Keck. I deleted the server behind it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, actually, that was a fair point. Someone said it'll hurt Chinese manufacturing. So if anybody here has the capital to start a factory, which may well be someone here, there's a grand total of 50 people here, there may well be enough money. One person might have been smart enough to be able to build a factory. Now would be a good time.
Yeah, with a small amount of money, you can build a small factory. I mean,
I'll be my own factory.
of course, we can't probably do like a steel foundry, which costs, I think, the Pohang steel foundry in South Korea costs, several $100 million. So, but things like domestically manufacturing, say firearms, is something that's totally within reach of a couple of us people. With some interest. So, what the original topic, which is opportunities currently presenting, I think investing in real estate somehow, either flipping probably isn't so good right now, but I've heard that like trying to find rental properties and wholesaling and so forth might be good right now. Not sure though. I haven't done much research. I just know the concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it might be a good idea to... I mean, I actually want to give a bit of pushback to the learn a trade meme, because while it is good to be good with your hands, I think that universities are sometimes slandered too much in our end of the internet, because frankly the humanities degrees are utterly useless. In fact, to the point where I thought it might be a good idea for some people on here to get together and make humanities courses, because the courses at university are so bad. But in sciences, if you want to do, for example, if you want to go into artificial intelligence, which is, something I've done, you can do a maths degree from a university and that will set you up. You can go and do the artificial intelligence degrees, the modules on that, and they will set you up. Because sometimes it's very obscure tools that they're teaching you, right? Like I said earlier on with support vector machines, they're not known by a huge amount of people. Like, I started my thesis doing natural language processing with deep neural networks because they're talked about constantly. But as I was studying more and more into the modules I was taking on artificial intelligence, I found that there were way more efficient ways of doing it, and in places I didn't expect. So, at least regarding things like that, and regarding very difficult things like, I don't know, maybe you find Newtonian and Hamiltonian mechanics very difficult or something. If you want to do something hard, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be a proper engineer, like one who does plenty of like mechanics or electronics or something like that, you're going to want to go to university to do that. But if you want to be maybe like I think there's so many lawyers that I don't really see the point in taking a law degree at this point unless it's somewhere really good. Or if you want to do something like I don't know, be an archaeologist, or accounting, you can teach. You can buy yourself an accounting textbook and go to your local college. Right, you'd be better off going to a local college to do the more unchanging fields. I won't say mundane, but
solid fields.
Yeah, there aren't really that many innovations in fields like accounting, or if you want to do maybe electrical engineering for houses, there isn't really that much in the way of innovation. But when it comes to things that are really, really difficult, like particularly mathematics. If you want to do something like, I don't know, maybe if you're in electronic engineering and you want to go into Internet of Things, you want to be as close to the universities as you can. So and also if you want to work with things that are really expensive, so for example, if you want to work manufacturing chipsets or something, you're going to need to go to a university to do that because no one here has the capital to set up a factory to build computer components because they're incredibly expensive.
Yeah, and I think the latest Intel fab or something costs $2 billion to construct.
They're expensive.
See, you have $2 billion.
Yeah, $2 billion, and still they cannot move past 14 nanometers. How interesting, Intel.
Yeah, actually, have they been manufacturing 2 nanometer chipsets?
Yeah, but with regards to Intel, this is a bit of a tangent, but TSMC and Global Foundries and Samsung and EUV have all moved well past 14 nanometers. I think TSMC is going to 7 nanometer photolithography right now, and Intel is still struggling with getting past 14 nanometer photolithography. So, and unrelated, a point about working with technology. I heard that electrical engineering, from people who I've spoken to, there's a lot less of the hands-on work on like wiring and stuff. And if you want to do something like working at a power station, you don't necessarily need to get an electrical engineering degree. You can get a technical degree in electrician work, and you can still do like really hands-on things. For example, a power plant. If you want to design power systems, you probably need an electrical engineering degree, but it's not necessary for certain classes of work that are involved with these technical systems.
Yeah, but if you're the kind of person who's just really into politics and wants to go to university, the only thing that you're going to get out of a political degree, unless you're that good and you manage to secure, I know a girl who got a internship with the EU in Strasbourg. Unless you're of that tier, unless you know for a fact that you are really up there, and frankly most people aren't, don't bother.
That's like an interesting thing with people who do like humanity, because at my school there's a program for doing like government and like journalism stuff, and everyone thinks that they're really good because they have a very long resume, but everyone else also has a very long resume. So this is one thing to consider if you're going into like more political fields, so to speak, like law or journalism or so forth. Don't go into journalism. I don't want to have to. Never mind.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I
Journalism.
mean, it's similar with comp sci. Like almost everyone has a GitHub. It's what your GitHub is in, right? Like my entire GitHub, I don't know if you have mine, Isidore. It's almost all C code, which isn't that useful to things aside from maybe if I was going to go to an electronic engineering tier field. But
I mean,
yeah, I mean the thing is though is that a lot of actually, to be fair, with a lot of computer scientists, there isn't really that much on their GitHubs, which is quite sad. But
computer scientists they're kind of like mathematicians, basically academic computer scientists.
Yeah,
they're just applied mathematicians.
It's basically, I mean, the entire AI field. In fact, I'm very tempted to do a video on this. A lot of these people online want to pretend that AI is going to somehow simulate a human brain. I mean, this just goes to show how little these people actually know about the mathematics behind AI. It's literally just find the smallest point on the curve. That's the whole thing. That's all of supervised learning right there, like that. And
it's just different numerical methods for optimization problems. It's like, your conscious experience is simply lots and lots of matrix multiplication.
I mean, like, people in the chat aren't going to understand like that necessarily, but basically, I'll try and do an AI explanation for someone who doesn't know maths, right? So imagine...
No, it's, your conscious experience is just Sudoku, okay? Sudoku is the entirety of your conscious experience.
I mean, it could be reduced to that in certain cases, but basically, imagine your brain as trying to minimize its error in perceiving the world, right? And you want to bring that to a minimum. That's basically AI, except on a piece of paper with a graph. Like, it's not really... Like, I personally enjoy doing it, because it's got a ton of applications, but it's not... Like, there's never going to be a human brain, and all of these people saying Turing test don't know what they're talking about, quite frankly. Like, oh, does a human think it's human? I mean, who cares? It still takes a human being to interpret it.
One thing that, if you know the game Detroit Become Human, which is like this, there was this scene where, like, I forgot his name, Kamsky or whatever. He devised a test where basically can a computer feel empathy or something, and like they make the robot try to shoot at a different robot. That's honestly probably a better test than the Turing test. A video game that kind of did not have a very good story probably has a better case for being an artificial intelligence test than the Turing test, because ethics is a much more difficult problem than a simple chatbot. Because AI safety, for example, is still a giant field of debate.
Yeah, I also don't like how they try and lift the tech giants up as if they're some sort of genius. Like, for example, right, encryption. All of the encryption that you use for your computers, it's all based on 400-year-old mathematics. The entire principle behind DES, which is the old system, but also AES and RSA encryption, it's all based on Fermat's Little theorem and all based on Euler's Toynat functions. And
the optimization for RSA, the Chinese remainder theorem, is from the Zhou dynasty, or something.
Yeah,
it's 2,600-year-old 2,600-year-old mathematics.
Yeah, and like these things have been discovered before and were known to people who didn't have. Well, I mean, they had irrigation, but they didn't have sophisticated farming techniques, right? And then you've got Elon Musk come up onto, Joe Rogan, and go on about how he's going to reach Mars. I mean, first of all, imagine how... Like, this is the thing that strikes me about a lot of tech people. They have absolutely no imagination at all. It's always like, oh, I'm going to send a rocket to Mars, or I'm going to solve world hunger. I mean, come on. Like, that's such a boring aim. Like, try and master yourself. That's something hard.
For Silicon Valley people should first learn how to fix the traffic in their own city before they go about talking about it.
Elon tried doing that.
Ephraim, I have to point this out though. You have to understand that this stupid specialization. Well, I guess it's not exactly stupid, but the specialization of divorcing intelligence from having a real personality. I mean, that goes all the way back to ancient Greece. I mean, you had Plato, who, Plato used his wrestler name for all of his philosophical work. This just goes to show,
Just call yourself
that these
Aristides,
philosophers
man.
are-
I mean, just call yourself Aristides.
Yeah,
That's
they
your
were-
real
I
name.
know. Yeah.
right. No, but the thing is that like, if you're gonna complain about like these tech people not having imagination, that's really just kind of an extension
mean-
of that.
I mean, we do the
specialization.
same
Taking
thing here,
place.
Nick. Right? Like, I'm not actually called Ephraim. Right? Like, that's not a good example. But I'm just like kind of ticked off with the tech giants because they're so boring. Imagine having being someone like Bill Gates having 50 billion in the bank, and currently potentially planning to take over the world by exploiting a viral pandemic, right? And you know what you do? You sit and you read. I mean, you've got like, you're the richest man on the planet, and you don't use it for anything. And you've got like the people who are supposedly the big dreamers who want to send like a rocket ship full of astronauts to another planet.
Again, I think like for Bill Gates and a lot of these richest people in tech, all of their money is currently in their stock portion,
Oh,
and the stock portion itself is overinflated, so it's like money that you can't actually ever use almost.
oh, it's just like, I mean, they could just sell it off then. I mean, these people have more economic potential than third world countries, and yet the dictators can do way more, right? Like, you don't see Bill Gates with his shirt off with a Kalashnikov fighting against insurgents in Western Africa, but you sure see people from like Zimbabwe doing that, and yet they're a lot poorer and they're a lot less powerful. I mean,
And what is it? Adversity is the mother of creativity. And with regards to tech, I think the reason why we hit such a huge roadblock with regards to technological development is because our tech has coddled us so much. So here's an example from, I think I said this to you earlier, but for other people, before the fall of the Soviet Union, scientists in Russia did not have access to really fancy computers. They had imitations that were 10 times slower than the Western ones.
Yeah.
So what the scientists had to do is, if they wanted to write simulations or do mathematics on their computer, they had to be clever, and they had to study algorithms. They had to study abstract algebra and all this stuff to optimize their programs. But nowadays, we just don't even care about it anymore. Put it in a container, spin up more instances on Amazon Web Services. Just throw more power at it and don't care about, algorithmic, complexity or anything like that.
yeah, it's like, unironically, I think it was one of my first year lectures, and they were talking about waiting for the computer to get faster rather than optimizing the algorithm in this lecture, and I was like,
Right.
This guy, you're literally justifying having a time complexity, which for people who don't know is how many, how many steps something has to execute to complete n tasks, right? You've got a big O notation of n cubed on your algorithm, and you're complaining that it's slow and that the tech guys need to make the computer quicker. I mean, just optimize your algorithm. You don't need to be doing that. You don't need O of n cubed for any task, unless it's like maybe a combinatorial thing.
There needs to be more
even like the prototypical like matrix multiplication, which is kind of, let's say, a dense matrix multiplication that takes even n to the power of 2.8, I think is a.
Well, yeah, it would be on squared, I think, because it's two dimensional, and then you've got n by n for the matrix. So it'd have to be n squared or something like that, because I mean, if you're multiplying it by like an array or another matrix, right, it's going to be dwarfed by the n, so you don't take that into account when you're talking about time complexity, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I mean, I should, like, I was tempted to write a book, not so much on like helping people with mental health, but just because the tech giants are just so boring. It's just...
I think it's more so that they're profoundly. No, yeah, you're right. It's because they're profoundly uncreative. Because, like, I mean, Okay, artists today they suck, but there is a
Damn it.
a principle in art about how great art is created in adversity, and that idea seems to be, just listening from this, completely lost on these tech giant guys.
I think
Everything.
the next generation of great engineers and artists are going to have played a lot of Minecraft because
Hell yeah.
because if you think about it,
Unironically, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Because-
Actually, it's funny you should say that, right? I was talking to a guy who was doing the same research project module as I was, right? And we were basically producing research papers that they weren't real research papers. They were like theses for a bachelor's degree. And I mean, mine was converting PDF mathematics from PDFs into LaTeX, but his was making cryptographic algorithms using Minecraft. Right, so he would force. I think it was like the cryptographic key was Minecraft blocks or something like that. and I was talking to him, and I was like thinking, that's a really cool idea, but what's the point? What's the point?
the reason I said it is because just like in the Soviet Union, where you have this kind of pressure, I think Talib talks about this, where you have a slight stressor that induces growth. People who are in Minecraft and they don't have all the fancy tools, they don't have Verilogs, fancy packages. They're going to be a lot more creative. People in Minecraft who don't have InDesign or whatever architects use, they're going to be a lot more creative too.
You know what, guys? I figured out how we're going to squeeze all of the creativity out of all of the computer scientists. Right? We're going to put their office in a cage suspended above a nightclub. Right? And that's going to give them sufficient stress to come up with the best tech possible. Right? See what I'm saying?
Yes.
So John von Neumann in Princeton, he used to listen to he used to turn on the television and listen to noisy radios and stuff for creativity. John von Neumann was a person who invented a lot of
John von
stuff.
Neumann, like a lot of people go on about Alan Turing because he was gay. Like the real genius there was John von Neumann. It wasn't Alan Turing. Alan Turing did some interesting stuff, but John von Neumann was just on another level. He's probably one of the smartest people to ever live. He's like
the lambda calculus.
yeah, he's like the Thomas Aquinas of early computer science, right? He's a genius.
He also converted to Catholicism before he died. So.
We win again.
Got him.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'm gonna just quickly flick through the chat. Would you recommend just doing a math degree? What would you personally do with it if you chose it? I tell you what I'd do. I'd do a maths degree and then go and do a master's in something computer science related, like artificial intelligence, right? Because frankly, computer science courses in the first year it's elementary mathematics up to, double integrals and double differentials, right? Like nothing too sophisticated, and a bunch of coding. I did it in Java. They're starting to adapt Python. Second year, it's software engineering techniques, algorithms, and data structures and basic things. Like I had to go over Chomsky normal form and grammars and stuff like that. But that isn't on all courses. But basically, like it's a little bit more technical, but mostly software engineering stuff. Third years are really interesting because you can specialize. But with mathematics, you spend I don't know exactly what is on the courses themselves, but you do a great deal of linear algebra, and linear algebra is one of the most useful fields possible for computer science because you can use it for graphics, you can use it for artificial intelligence, you can use it to an extent for networks. Yeah, you can use it to an extent for networks. And also, if you learn number theory, you can do cryptography. Then you can do all kinds of things. The only thing that I'd recommend taking a bachelor's for is that if you're interested in doing things like compilers, if you're I'm talking at an academic level here, I'm not talking about jobs, right? Like if you just want the job and you don't want to worry about master's degree, then go for a computer science degree, obviously. But if you want to study academically, the only reason I'd recommend doing that as a bachelor's would be if you want to do compilers and interpreters, and if you're the kind of poor, boring soul that's interested in software engineering techniques, then you can do that. I don't know why you'd want to research GitHub for the rest of your life, though.
I have a
Maybe
question.
you're a nerd. Hmm?
Like I'm sorry, right? Like mathematics is kind of nerdy, but I mean, I I can't imagine someone doing their doctoral thesis on SVN. It would try. It would like climb the wall before I did that.
It's very mathematics is kind of like it's a very general field. So it's easy to pivot into a lot of things. Also, if you do this is why I asked Ephraim if he was going to work at like a company like Optiver because of his specialization in AI and networks, or Renaissance Technologies because of your channel name, right?
I actually didn't hear that
So-
because there's some background noise. What did you say?
Yeah,
Sorry.
there's a company, there's a hedge fund in America called Renaissance Technologies, and they kind of pioneered the quantitative finance field. And I was reminded because of your name, and they did a lot of work. Actually, I think the original person who founded it, Jim Simons, he worked for the NSA or something, and he hired a lot of NSA cryptographers to work on mathematical finance and to do like trading algorithms and signals processing, network theory, and all that sort of stuff. Which is why I asked you. I think the biggest trading firms in the UK would probably be something like Optiver or Jump.
I mean, I don't know, right? Like, I know for a fact, though, before I go and do a master's, well, I mean, if I'm going to do a master's, it could be in a few months. If they open things up and there's actually a campus to go to, then I will go and do a master's this year. But I want to sharpen up particularly number theory and linear algebra just because it's so useful. Right? Like, you see, the thing is that we're arguing about a much of a muchness, to be honest, because if you get a degree in mathematics or you get a degree in computer science, I mean, if you put the work in, you'll end up with a middle-class income relatively quickly. This isn't like something like, I don't know, drama or English literature, where it's a lot harder, and you have to be, like, really, really, really good at it, or really, really good at talking to people. That's something that people underestimate a lot, actually. Like, one of the great things about university is that you're kind of forced to go out and meet people. Yeah. Yeah, like, I can tell you I learnt a lot more sitting around and listening to listening to people smoking hashish than I did in my lectures. I didn't really go to my lectures, to be honest, but yeah.
One of those.
Yeah. Does anyone actually really go to the lectures, though, when they can just open up the book and learn it in, like, an hour? More effectively.
They go to the lectures.
Not if they...
I think the benefit of the lecture is necessary because you can always, again, in our current situation, we've seen the substantive difference to what happens when you have lectures versus videos and books. Physically getting up, being there, having a routine, being near other people, and changing your environment has that much of an effect on your efficacy at studying the material. Also, you can ask questions, which if you email your professor, it's kind of different because you're
You
not
can email
physically
him.
there. You don't see them.
Email him. You know what I did? I just emailed him. I walked into his office and I said, "Hi, okay, so I'm trying to understand, I don't know, backpropagation algorithm. Is this derivative telling me what direction and the actual magnitude doesn't matter all that much? Yes, okay, thank you." You don't have to do that. And when I was actually forced into seminar situations where I was around other students, which, like, I'll put it this way, computer science students are a lot different from the politics, history, and psychology students I was normally out drinking with. Like, a lot different. It was kind of cringe. It was kind of cringe, and they didn't, like, it was normally just...
They didn't shower.
It was, yeah, oh man, I remember, I had a cryptography professor, lovely guy, right, real smart guy, and he says in the first lecture, he gets up and he says, "Guys, we're in a warm lecture theatre, guys, and last time we did this course, we had complaints because of the smell. Could you guys please shower?"
Wow.
No.
Yeah, whereas, psychology, politics, and economics students, also a lot of people who study Bohr, I talk to them a lot, they were generally, relatively normal, maybe a little bit eccentric sometimes, but, the comp sci people, like, they were joking about, oh, lol, I'm going to put the water emoji next to the peach emoji in the, because we were doing this AI course where we were building creative systems, and I did it, and I'm just, like, cringing, because it's just, okay, the joke is that it's related to sex, okay, we're at university. It's kind of hard to avoid
Yeah.
it. It's like someone telling a "Why did the chicken cross the road?" joke for the 8th time in 20 minutes. It's like, okay, haha, you're joking about sex. It's like I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I'm on a Discord server with I go to kind of like a STEM oriented school, and I'm on the Discord server, and the memes are very Reddit. It's a lot of jokes about anime and like loot stuff, and then you have jokes about big chungus, but it's not even like the funny ironic kind of chungus. It's the Reddit kind of chungus, which is bad, as you know. So it's just very, and these are the same people who are selected for things like hackathons. If you know what a hackathon is, it's like programming like competition where you stay for a certain number of hours and you build a product basically. And the culture is so homogenized and such a monoculture of sense of humor and so forth that it's just. I went to two hackathons and I just could not stand it because it was so soy. It was disgusting.
Oh man, I remember. I just remember sitting in the first lecture in the computer science hall and like 2 or 3 people walking in Rick and Morty shirts and in Family Guy shirts, and I actually 100%ed a seminar for one of these creativity projects because I read through this creativity paper and they were trying to make compelling storylines, and so you know what they did? They assigned a score directly to a character lying because that makes the story more interesting, right? And I laughed at this and I said I basically said these researchers don't understand how human beings work and what makes a good narrative, and I just started quoting Aristotle at them and just like articulating the difference between intellect and will, because I spent a lot more time reading business books and philosophical books and books on spirituality than I did reading tech books. So like I was like sitting there reading this paper.
I truly wonder if Masoma, right?
Oh yeah.
If we had more people like that, people who knew computer science students who knew what modus ponens and modus tollens were, and at least knew how to follow a simple syllogism. Maybe read a little bit of the Euclid's Elements and a little bit of Aristotle's Organon. How different computer science would be.
Like, I can't actually remember what modus tollens and modus ponens are. I can't remember the exact, but I obviously know. I've worked with enough classical syllogisms to know how they roughly work, of course, and we were taught Boolean and modern logic in a second-year class, so I know how it roughly operates. But I don't think necessarily that the computer scientists would benefit quite so much from reading, say, Euclid's Elements, or going through and reading Pascal's mathematical work or Fermat's mathematical works. I think that would benefit them somewhat, but I think what would benefit them a lot more is if you forced them to take a class on the scholastics or on basically any philosopher that doesn't follow Parmenides or Heraclitus' line of thought. Something that forces them to acknowledge actual wisdom isn't being able to make the squiggly line on the screen do what you want. It's about judging, understanding the moral law and discerning how people work. Because they like these kind of nerdy people, they think that they're so superior with their complex derivatives and partial derivatives and stuff, and really they're just they're going to be trapped in middle class or upper middle class jobs because these people are too conceited to learn about other people, first of all. And second of all, they're too conceited to learn about high culture. High culture isn't high because snobs read about it. It's high because it raises the mind up to another level.
And this is recently a project I've taken myself on. Is the problem with like these computer science people and their obsession with IQ, and like, so as you know, IQ is pretty problematic. I mean, in this community, we probably know what IQ means. But the problem with IQ is that it's fundamentally totally made up, in that psychologists have never truly come up with a metaphysical theory of mind. And one of the tasks that I've made for myself is creating an intelligence test that actually follows sort of Platonic theory of mind and measures, and an Aristotelian theory of mind and seeing measuring, quantifying how well someone is at, thinking logically, integrating information, perceiving forms, these sorts of things. Whereas, in psychometrics, it's like how smart you are is like a linear combination of what your performance is on rearranging these blocks and, reciting digits backwards.
Wow, you've got a really good quantitative ability. Well done. That makes you superior to everyone else. I mean, come on. Like the equations that they throw around in most computer science aren't even that sophisticated anyway, right? I mean, unless you're talking about, like I said earlier on, things like support vector machines, right? That are quite complicated, and some of the more, like that. It's not that complicated if you're willing to put the time in. What is really complicated is getting one of these computer scientist people to be able to talk to a girl in a way where he doesn't either immediately simp or completely misreads a signal and lands in some serious trouble, right? Like that would be a good IQ test, right? Like can you interact and exist around normal people?
But the psychometricians would probably tuck that in under something like extroversion. Of course, it's all the psychometricians are just very soft. Yeah, I don't.
Sorry, I'm just.
I don't really know. I'm sorry. I was trying to finish the sentence, but I couldn't because as someone who's very invested in statistics and things like this, the use of statistics in things like psychometrics, economics, and biology is very off-putting to me. I wanted to talk about the topic that I had a long time ago, which was how do we use the economic crisis to try to get economic opportunities. And I was thinking, okay, what are house prices going to be like? Right. Well, I want to ask your opinion because I'm not a very fast thinker. What is going to happen to the housing market because of this coronavirus?
Okay, so this is what I've heard from other people, and it also makes a lot of sense to me, right? So you have this significant problem where people aren't as able to pay their rents as they were before because they have reduced income. Granted, they also have reduced spending, but they can only furlough people for so long. So you have people who are unable to pay their rent. And then, because of the way the majority of the landlords work, which is they put in a minimum investment possible, and then they use the rents to pay the mortgage payments, they're not going to be able to pay the mortgage payments, which is going to lead to a load of foreclosures all at the same time, potentially. Now, that means that the entire housing market is going to be flooded with houses all at roughly the same time, and a lot of people keen to get shot of them because they're going to get foreclosed on, or they're under serious threat of that, which is naturally going to reduce the price. Now, obviously, I can't determine how much, but that's a very strong possibility. And even if they don't stop the furloughing and people get roughly back on track, there's been enough of a jolt in the way that the economics have functioned that people who are already kind of borderline in paying their mortgages, and make no mistake, landlords are often in this position as well. Like, landlords aren't always that rich. In fact, I know of a 20-year-old guy who came on a podcast called the Big Pockets podcast, or Bigger Pockets podcast, I can't remember exactly what it's called, and he was 20 and he'd acquired something like 3 dozen houses through this method of producing the minimum amount required for a loan or a mortgage, buying the house and then renting it out, right? You have people who are borderline like that, and
they're extremely leveraged. I mean, the leverage is exactly what happened in 2008 with the large banks.
Yeah.
I mean, I know some people who do this real estate investing. There's like this millionaire on YouTube who were able to buy a house and then rent it out, but also refinance it because of the improvements that they put in that, and also have enough money in the bank already so that they wouldn't be totally screwed if, say, you have a house vacant for say 60 days or so, of course, he wouldn't be totally screwed. Whereas a lot of these people, again, they're running on fumes essentially, and if you interrupt it, then they fall apart.
Yeah, I mean, we're in potentially pretty dire straits. Anyway, I'm going to see if there are any final questions, and then we're going to bring this to the close because it's just after an hour. Let's see. Am I a mathematical nominalist or a realist? Ooh, that's a complicated question. Because I believe Aquinas was an anti-realist, but at the same time, I kind of tend more towards a Platonic view of mathematics where numbers exist in the mind of God. So I suppose I would be a mathematical realist. A lot of people saying, well, what do you expect out of the tech giants? They're autistic.
Well, yeah, no.
Yeah, the corporation as an institution, it serves as a magnifier for its inputs, which are its people. So if you look at the average tech bro and see how uncreative and soy and irresponsible and effeminate they are, and you take that and put 10,000 of those people and put them into one building in San Francisco, then that is the tech giants, or not San Francisco, Palo Alto rather.
Well, they are trying to break that up by hiring these awfully brain dead but quote unquote creative types into the mix. You know, these people that we've been complaining about for, gosh darn it, how long has it been since?
2 years.
It's been a while.
I mean, the thing is that the SJWs themselves aren't that creative.
That's what I mean. But they're called that.
They're resentful people with a bizarre, convoluted ideology that literally rejects that words mean what they mean. So they're not particularly creative themselves.
They're called that, though. I'm sorry. That's how people think of them. They think they're creative. I mean, not only do they themselves think they're creative, but other people will call them creative, mostly because they said the right things to them.
I mean, at this point, creative seems to be some sort of synonym for I did a lot of ecstasy.
Yes.
I mean,
I did a lot of ecstasy, and here's how I disagree with platitudes that have existed since the beginning of humankind. Yes, those people are called creative types now. I understand that they're not really creative, but
an interesting diagnosis I've been thinking about, the thesis that I've been working on, and so forth. That can solve a lot of the problems that we've talked about in this stream is nowadays, because of how our brains have been trained with television and internet, or our minds rather, is that we think in terms of labels and in terms of connections and in terms of classifications rather in terms of the actual substance.
Whoops. I'm a fool. I just did something wrong there. Sorry. Come on. Yeah, I just opened Discord on a second tab. I'll be back in with them in like 15 seconds.
It's a perspective of X from Y or perspective of Y from X. And drawing these sort of like very fuzzy metaphors. That's like a lot of academic papers in the humanities is drawing fuzzy metaphors and so forth. And in political debates, guilt by association, etc. You know, I know on Twitter there's currently a meme going around about women with dissertations, and it's the exact same thing. It's like, what does X think about Y, or what does Y think about Z, instead of what is X or what is Y. Which is why if you go to a computer science.
Yeah, you know, at this point, I think that the most productive academics, and I think that the most productive academics are going to be the people who literally are just middle class people who read a lot and have nice studies. Like, I don't mean nice studies like they go out and collect a lot of data. I mean a nice comfy chair and some wooden furniture, right? I can't imagine, aside from having, you know, the financial and resources of people at a university, I can't imagine how, considering how peer review is, how you could possibly produce original research. Like, unironically, I think somebody like David Icke, who has insane ideas, right? There's probably more interesting things to explore within his books than there are in the current academic establishment.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, yeah, because
Luke Smith made a video about in defense of quote unquote pseudoscience, which is just
Luke
term
Smith?
for Luke Smith. Yeah, he's makes
Yeah.
videos about technology and so forth.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm kind of very invested in things like diet and health. And there's someone that named Ray Pete. He's a doctor, or he's a doctor of philosophy, studied biology, and he talks about how calcified and stultified current academic research regarding medical biology is. And
you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make 70% of the diet carbohydrates.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
10
full
out
of
of 10.
mycotoxins. So like you think of all these things like, oh, you need to eat whole grains, you need to eat vegetable oils and so forth, and then he turns all that on its head. Actually, you need to eat like lots of sugary fruits, and you need to avoid. And red meat isn't bad. It's only because they're fed garbage. And so things that people didn't think about, but are kind of obvious once you look at it. And that's just the amount of stultification in academia. And back to my original point about people who think in terms of connections rather than in terms of substance is I've seen this a lot in sort of online right-wing communities. Is you have a lot of people who think in terms of this weird perennialism where they think, oh, I'm smart because I can draw connections between, there are three incarnations of Buddha and there are the Trinity. So those are the same things because they both use the number three. It's this kind of extremely fuzzy thinking that bothers me to no end. And it's just they try to break out of like quote unquote liberal thought patterns, but they can't break free of this one very subtle thing, which is they don't understand substance. They can only think in terms of connection. Even if they do read lots of books, let's say they read lots of Spengler or someone like that. They read a lot of Kumaraswamy or something, right? Even those people, they just thought in terms of connections. I mean, it's a very pernicious disease that people don't really consider logic and syllogism as worthwhile tools. They think metaphor and analogies are the entirety of philosophy. And in our Catholic communities online, people who kind of, I mean, this is more so on Twitter than anyone I've seen on Discord. And if you know these people, you can tell them out on it, is that they don't really look into how things, what the actual text of things are. They just do guilt by association and stuff like this. And it's really annoying when it comes to things like people who don't even know that, say, the Second Vatican Council and the Mass promulgated by Pope Paul VI were actually two entirely separate things, but it's just that they're connected mentally and they're mentally.
I mean, I can
everything...
I can plug my my fork into an open electrical socket and make a link there, but it's not going to provide anything useful.
Yeah, but it's just an internet disease because McLuhan talked about the internet. It gets rid of our attention span. So forget about syllogisms and sitting down and thinking about things for a prolonged period of time. And it's all about connections. Clicking through links online is primed us from a child's age to think about making these schizophrenic links on Twitter threads about such and such philosophical topic.
Anyway, we're going to bring this to a close because we've been going for quite a while. If you guys want to continue it, anybody who's still here, I'm going to stick a link to the... Yeah.
Don't do a keto. Keto is bad. I'm looking at Chav in the comments. Yeah, keto causes systemic stress.
Yeah. Okay,
it's very bad on the body.
We're gonna bring it to a close because I haven't actually done maths for today yet, and I've got 35 minutes. So, yeah, I'll see you guys later. Thank you very much for coming on, you guys.
Yeah. Bye.
And thanks everyone for watching. See you later, guys.
Yeah.
As long.
I mean, I was going to just close the